Welcome to Canada's podcast. Welcome to Canada's podcast, the number one podcast for entrepreneurs in Canada. I'm Phil Bliss, founder of Canada's podcast. Today, we're going to meet Maz Power, who's the CEO at SA Capital Partners. Maz's expertise includes private placement and investment, obviously raising capital, structuring debt and equity capital, and managing the risk and investment, developing new business opportunities, and leading new due diligence teams. He has a proven ability to develop and maintain strong working relationships at all levels within an organization. So Maz, welcome to Canada's podcast. It's great to have you. I know you're just over the border in Chicago, but when we chatted, you said that you certainly, helped to finance a lot of Canadian operations. And I think it's important to meet every so often people in your position to get some kind of feedback for those people that are out trying to raise money to realize their vision, if you like. And you are an entrepreneur, you're the founder and everything else. So I think that's great. But before we go into sort of a general conversation, just do what I always ask is, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing now, why you're talking to me, if you like, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, first off, Phil, thank you for having me on your podcast. Big fan. I really, think that what you're doing for the Canada region in terms of just bringing awareness to a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners, in terms of just giving them some more insight is invaluable.
Just to give you a sense, I mean, we, as sort of in the business side of it, is we actually have the highest entrepreneurship. We're about 20% of the country is entrepreneur-driven businesses. It's very, very interesting.
Wow, very impressive. So a little bit about myself. I am the CEO of SA Capital Partners. At SA Capital Partners, essentially started this business to primarily focus in terms of working with early stage, growth stage ventures that are seeking capital, any sort of M&A types of needs, and bringing a different type of model to the table. Prior to this, I owned and ran my own boutique investment banking group out of Chicago that focused more on the middle market. Did that for a number of years and started SA Capital about 5-6 years ago. So in terms of working in the Canadian region, worked with a number of clients in Canada. Obviously, there's a synergistic fit, being our neighbor up north. A lot of U.S.-based investors are looking to heavily invest into the Canadian region. So just it just completely opens it up. When dealing with a lot of early stage, growth stage businesses. This is something that over the last, I want to say 5 to 10 years, things have definitely changed, a bit in terms of things opening up and, cross-border type of transactions and so on and so forth.
So you meet tons of entrepreneurs. I mean, I looked at your background and it's very much, in sort of investment economics analysis, but now you're obviously leading a group that's raising money for to realize sort of entrepreneurial kind of opportunities. Do you think entrepreneurs are wired differently? You meet them all the time, so it's good to get an observation. What's your impressions of entrepreneurs as an investor and / analyst? I mean, is there some sort of profile? Can you give us some insights into who we are or what we should be, if you like? Just trying to get that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there is certain characteristics that fit any entrepreneur. Right off the bat, obviously taking a look at it, there's a level of, having that ability to take risks I don't think, you're going to be a successful entrepreneur if you're not willing to take risks. I think having that quality of being able to multitask as well is something that's, somewhat necessary in order to be successful as an entrepreneur. And just being open-minded, a lot of, when you're starting a business, and it doesn't matter what industry you're starting in, and there's a level of trial and error. And, you're going to make some right decisions and you're going to make some wrong decisions, but, it's having the ability to go back and, being able to pivot is something that I feel is very necessary for any successful entrepreneur, and especially in this climate. I think, right now we're at a place where it's extremely competitive. Over the last several years, there's more early stage, growth stage companies more than there has ever been in the past. So it's having that ability to, really withstand the competition and, being able to really, bring something to the table that's, somewhat innovative, somewhat different, and just being very open-minded, when entering this space.
So you're in the north, but on the US side,
Mm-hmm.
do you notice that sort of a difference between the Canadian, the sort of entrepreneur that's emerging, looking for financing, versus the US one? I'm just wondering if you see.
No, I mean, from that perspective, I think, any entrepreneur, whether, obviously, I think that matters more, obviously, if, when you're looking at certain entrepreneurs that are coming out of a more, out of the Toronto region compared to something that's a little bit, not as, city-like. So, I think that's really where you see, somewhat difference. Obviously, entrepreneurs that are coming out of a more of a city type of atmosphere, it's a little bit, they're really used to the competition, and they understand that from the onset, there's a lot more competition than maybe compared to if you're not in a big city for that matter.
But you're an entrepreneur yourself. I mean, you've built something that does the task of investment. What are you most excited about today in your business? I mean, from say 5 years ago.
I think that the biggest thing that really excites me is the direction that a lot of companies are going in. 5 years ago, 7 years ago, it was a very difficult space to be in when you're starting an early stage, growth stage business. Essentially, you had, especially in the States, you primarily had to go down that Silicon Valley route, that VC route. These days, the emergence of many different types of investors, whether it's your smaller family offices, your high net worth individuals, angel investors, it's completely opened up the doors. And there's been a lot of success stories. So a lot more investors are a lot more open to investing into early stage, growth stage companies, as opposed to, several years ago when, it was considered a very risky space to invest into.
So in terms of early stage, I've got all kinds of listeners and viewers sort of look at these things that are those people.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need? What things mustn't they miss out? Okay, that you see, you see people like that every day of the week, and obviously certain ones make it through, others don't. What are the ones that make it through have that those others don't?
I'll be very candid with you. I think, a lot of times less is more. And I find that the entrepreneurs or, the companies that are starting out, sometimes they try to tackle on too much too quickly. And I think, the ones that kind of focus on one sector and do understand, even though they may have a strategy eventually to branch into other types of industries, products, whatever the case may be, I think it's better to focus, and take it slowly as opposed to doing too much at once. And that scares a lot of investors because, right away they realize that the more different products or different industries that you're tackling, the more capital it's going to require. Right. So I think, the ones that kind of do understand that and they try to focus, and take it one step at a time, those are the ones that, do have a higher success rate than, as opposed to somebody who's trying to do everything at once.
Okay, so let's move away from those insights, which are great, by the way. That's super.
Thank you.
I mean, you're here as an entrepreneur yourself. What's the greatest challenge you faced in your business to date?
I think, it's keeping the communication channels open on all areas. And what I mean by that, whether internally within, speaking to your employees, understanding what's going on, being open-minded to, like I said before, pivot, make those adjustments, whether it's to your own business model, whatever the case may be, you kind of have to evolve as time progresses. It's also very important to have strong communication channels, whether it's your clients or customers or whatever the case may be, in terms of really understanding from them, certain things that they may not understand, and kind of walking their hand through holding their hand throughout the process. For a lot of entrepreneurs, it is, when they are starting out from scratch, it is a lot of times when they do come to us, it is their first rodeo in terms of raising capital, and sometimes there's certain things that they may not understand. So from a timeline perspective, it's really communicating that the right way and making them understand that it does take time sometimes, and you really have to have that ability to present it and not have a one size fits all approach when speaking to an investor. Doing your homework and understanding certain investors want certain things a certain way, and just communicating those things. So I think communication is someone that's always the biggest challenge when starting any business, whether it's internally or it's externally in terms of dealing with your customers or clients.
In terms of investment, what's hot at the moment? There's been changes. So, I mean, I'm pretty familiar with the tech side of things. So I'm just curious to see, what are the things that your investment kind of clients are interested.
So, technology, tech is always going to be a very hot space. And, obviously, if you can figure out an easier way to do something, that's going to entice any investor, because that's going to be a very easy, product or service to present to, a certain demographic. Healthcare has always been something that is obviously at the forefront of everything, especially coming out of a pandemic. And, a lot of people are looking for, better ways to do certain things. So, tech, healthcare, and then, obviously products and services, anytime you can introduce something that, puts a different spin on something that may already exist, or something that's completely different, has always been something that excites a lot of investors.
In terms of building your own business, it kind of flip between advice and yourself, pardon me. But, what's the best piece of advice that you've received that you kind of keep in your back pocket and use all the time? Or
open door policy.
All the time, but
yeah,
it's there,
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep an open door policy. Like I said, I can't say it enough. Communication is very important, and it's one of those things that as you do communicate with your employees internally, it's not something that you just want to brush off or ignore. You have to be open-minded. When listening to, because, keep in mind, a lot of your employees are in there, every day dealing with, customers and clients. So they have a lot of invaluable feedback that they're going to bring to the table. So it's really, listening to them and, keeping those doors open and, having an open door policy where they feel comfortable to come to you to communicate, certain things that they feel, can, possibly improve your business model or, if it makes sense to make certain changes.
So let's have some fun questions. That's all been pretty serious stuff. If you weren't doing what you were doing now, what would you be doing instead?
Oh, that's a really tough question. I'm not going to lie. I probably would have said, if you asked me this question, maybe 15, 20 years ago, I probably would have told you, yeah, I want to be an NBA basketball player. I love I love speaking to people. I like giving advice. So I like the advisory components. Maybe I would be like yourself and, have my own podcast, something along those lines.
I always ask people, what book are you currently reading? But it could be listening to, or if not that, what would you recommend to people that they should, take time and listen to it or read it?
Yeah, I'm a huge podcast person. So obviously I like to listen to various different podcasts. In terms of recent books, I just read Grant Cardone's 10X Rules. I thought it was a well-written book. He gave a lot of insight in terms of, his business. And, keep in mind, even if it's a completely different industry, it's always great because an entrepreneur's journey is very similar, even though, it may be a completely different industry. And, obviously he's specializes more on the real estate side of things. But there's always a sales component to any business that you do. So anytime you could get valuable sales secrets or insights, it's definitely going to help you in a major way.
So the fun thing, I always ask this, and you've listened to my podcast, are you a morning or a night person?
I am definitely more of a night person. I feel like that's when I get a lot.
20%. It's about 80% morning and 20% night person. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely get my creative juices flowing a lot more in the evening time. But in this industry, you sometimes, whether it's mornings or nights, you're kind of thrown in there, right away.
If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be, and why would you choose that word?
I think the one word to describe myself is ambitious.
That's good.
And I've always been, one of those people that really believed in accountability and, taking ownership on certain things. I think, when you start any business, the goal is to, really, not only, push your business, but to do, good things. And, it all goes together. And, I think, the reason why I feel like anybody, has a strong ambition is to eventually it is to help people.
So what's keeping you up at night these days?
The economy. I definitely think the economy is something that's keeping a lot of entrepreneurs up. There's a lot of uncertainty, especially here in the United States and globally everywhere.
It's the same.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it's the same things, and I think, a lot of being an entrepreneur in whatever industry, it's a lot like playing chess. You
Mhm.
want to be 3 steps ahead. So in doing that, you really want to, have your ears out there in terms of understanding, what's going on, from an economic perspective, and how one could pivot and make adjustments and changes.
Hmm. I hate to say it, but we're coming to the end of my 25 minutes here. It was really fast, but I really. How can people get a hold of you? Especially because you're obviously in the investment side, so I'm sure there's going to be quite a few entrepreneurs that might want to sort of connect with you.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way would be to go to our website directly, www.sacapitalpartners with an S, LLC.com. There you could definitely schedule a call or, get, or email information, shoot us an email. But that would probably be the best way to get a hold of us. I could also, leave you with our main number, which is 212-235-2761.
Okay. Well, thanks very very much for coming on, as we kind of changed this around a few times. We're both busy people.
Yeah, I know. I want to apologize. It's like I told you, like coming out of the new year, these holidays took a little bit longer than
Yeah.
we were used to the last several years. But I want to thank you for having me on. Like I said, I'm a big fan. I think you're doing a really good thing, for a lot of entrepreneurs in the Canadian region, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Thanks for
Likewise.
coming. Bye bye.
Yep. Take care.